Well, what's up, Benji? Welcome into episode 4 of the Higher Up
Another
Podcast.
episode, man. Another episode.
Another one. It's man, it's good to get rolling. We're trying to just roll these out for you guys. I know that we won't have one next week, so we're gonna try and help you guys out and get one. Benji and I are really working to get episodes to you about every other Thursday. We felt like that was kind of the good middle ground. If we start on
Yeah.
Thursday, if we drop on Thursday mornings, they'll be, they'll drop in around 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning. Make sure that you guys turn on your notifications just so you can stay up to date when those drop. But we are trying to stay consistent. I think that'll be good, Benji, if we can stay consistent with that. Every other Thursday, they're getting kind of a bonus.
Yep.
We did talk about that a little bit last time, that sometimes you may get an extra episode in between instead of waiting. But new one will be dropping today, which is Thursday. So
Yeah. By the way, that's Central Standard Time, just so everybody knows. We got our East Coast and West Coast folks.
Yeah.
We actually have some overseas, people listening too now, Adam.
we
So
do.
kind of cool.
We're a little popular in Sweden. I don't know why. So we do have some listeners overseas in Sweden. I kid you not.
Appreciate you guys listening very much.
Thank you very much. So it's going to be a good one today. Good episode. I told you before, we were talking about this prior to planning. This is going to be a little bit of a touchy subject, I guess, for me. I know I was a little bit nervous with this one. Probably because this is what I struggle with the most. And I know we're trying to talk and bring topics that teach you to live a higher up life, and what helps you in your journey, and what helps you grow and just be better. And so I kind of told you, I'm like, well, what better way to do this than to just throw it out there? I mean, episode 4. Let's just throw it out there on episode.
Okay, think about this though. I mean, our goal is to inspire the people too. So everything we talk about during this episode may inspire someone else. So just look at it that way.
I hope so. If y'all, for those of you that are watching, or some of our Gavodcast watchers, if you catch me looking off a little bit, I've made some notes to stay focused on this one, because I know that this is a big topic for me. I know that I can get off on a tangent, but I guess I'll quit leaving you in anticipation. You're like, all right, Adam, what are we talking about?
What is the topic?
What is the topic? Well, it's fun. It's kind of cool. We named this one. It'll be fun. The topic of today's episode is keeping up with who? The mind games of comparison culture. So we're going to be talking about basically that comparison. And I believe culture is fitting, Benji, because today, in today's age, I feel like I feel like it's a fitting term, because I feel like that's in culture now, is to compare ourselves to people.
Everyone is always comparing themselves for whatever reason to something, someone. And so I'm really excited about this topic. As you mentioned, I understand you might struggle with. I think everybody struggles with this to some degree. So it's man, let's get into it.
It'll be a good one. So before we define what comparison culture is, why this topic, this is something that I felt like was important.
Yep.
Because we are in that. And like you mentioned, Benji, we've got to help other people. And that's the whole point of this podcast, is to help others. I don't want anybody listening to think that Benji and I know it all. If anything, Benji surely does. Benji probably does. He's acclimated, decorated entrepreneur. Like we've told you, I'm the rookie on the block, but we don't want you to ever feel like we know everything. We're just life experiences. It's exactly why you hear it in our intro. Everything we want to talk about is life experiences, things we've walked through, things that we've done, in hopes that it relates to you. So that's why I felt like this was an important topic for us to discuss. Because
do you remember when you were a kid? Okay, think about it this way: you were a kid. Your parents used to think, "Gosh, I know everything."
I was thinking this the whole time.
I know everything. I'm the kid. I'm the teenager. I'm growing up. I'm trying to figure out my way in life or whatever. Now we're parents.
Yep.
We have kids.
The worst part is I remember telling my mom and dad I'll never do that with my kids. I'm not going to tell them that. I'm not going to say that. And then Benji, I kid you not, I caught myself the other day telling Addison, one day you'll understand when you have kids and you can tell them this.
It's true, but here's the point.
My father, that's who I become.
We are always learning. We should always be learning.
Yeah.
Some people, like we said, read books. Some people listen to music. Some people
Yeah.
like to go into, solitary confinement, whatever. We're always learning some
Yeah.
way. We're
Yeah.
always learning.
So I wrote this down as we jump into it. All right, so I'm sure most people hear the word comparison culture and they understand what it means.
Yeah.
But I wrote this down, like, what is comparison culture? Here it is. This is the definition that I found. It is a term used to describe the phenomenon of constantly comparing oneself to others. Often can be with a negative or self-critical perspective.
Very interesting. That definition, we were talking about this earlier.
hmm
Why is it that people always have to go to the negative? You ever thought about that? Like,
I
why
think
why do you have to go negative? Why can't we
it,
spin it positive?
and we talked about this in a prior podcast. I actually had a long time student leader that I've stayed in good connection with. For those of you that listen, I grew up in Okinawa, Japan, in high school, so I don't get to see a lot of people as most people as we don't have any. I
Yep.
never run across anybody I went with, and so he actually, funny story, Benji lives 5 minutes from our Houston territory.
Mm,
So but he called me and was just asking me some questions about some digital marketing. He's like, "Hey, I see you posting, I see you doing this." And he actually said, "Hey, I was calling too because I've been listening to the podcast and I had a question, like, what do you mean churches are the most critical?" And as I listened back, I was like, I want to make sure I clarify when we talked about that in a previous podcast. I don't know how many of you listeners are out there. I'm a part of a handful of creative groups on Facebook,
yeah.
whether that's for content creation and most of it is church based. Most of it is that, whether it's I'm part of some called like Creative Church 24, which I've done some work with. Nick Goodner has created that in his team. I'm a part of some that you're in. Just on, I mean, it could be, it's everything from, hey, what is your church doing, to, I mean, the technical part of what happens during worship or with
Mm-hmm.
the gear. So we're part of a lot of those. And when I mentioned that, I was talking about a lot that I feel like when you post your work, or sometimes even as simple as asking a question, people are like, that's stupid. Why would you ever ask that? Or I haven't experienced it because I've seen what other people do, but people have posted like graphics they've made or videos they've made or things that they're doing with their churches. And it's crazy to me how many people will get on there that also, I would assume, because they're
Yeah.
in this group or have some type of relationship with Jesus, are
Mm-hmm.
in hopefully serving in their church, and they're just tearing it down. I mean, like, look, our team doesn't agree on every single thing we create, but I'm not
Right.
going to
Right.
sit there and tell somebody it's stupid or it looks bad.
That's
So
that's
just
my that's my point.
mhm,
Every time it always feeds back to negative for some
negativity.
reason. And it's
Mhm,
like the culture today is, it can't ever be, man, that's a really
mhm,
good job you did. Or, hey man, I would love to know more about how you did that so I can try to
mhm.
accomplish the same
Ask
thing.
questions.
Yeah, regardless of where we're at in the stage, right? We
Yeah,
either starting out or we're achieving
yeah,
the top. We're not
yeah.
there, we're achieving it. So that's it's really frustrating today in culture.
Well, and we're going to dive into a little bit more in depth about that today, but I think a lot of that comes from you don't know what you don't know, and people fear what they don't know.
Mhm.
So if somebody has something that they're posting and they're watching what other people are doing and they have no idea how to do it, I guess, human nature, our first cognitive thought is to tear it down. Like, well, because I fear, I know that sounds like a stupid thing to say, but you fear something you don't understand. I don't understand how to create that. I don't even know where to begin,
Well,
you
think
know?
about it would be different if you ask, "Hey, what do you
hmm
guys think how do you think I did on this?"
hmm
Right? And then when you ask, be careful what the responses are gonna be, because you gotta be willing to accept it
Be,
and take it in. You've opened the
hmm
door.
hmm And yeah, and it's important too, because no matter how much you try to deny it, it can affect your mental health. I
Yeah,
truly believe it can have a direct correlation into that, because it eats at you when you're comparing yourself to other people, and
right.
you're seeing that. First and foremost, what are some of the key things that you do? Where can you compare yourself to? First and foremost, social media.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely, yep.
to me, that is the top place that people are seeing that. I had it explained to me one time. Somebody told me that when back in the think about this back in the day, it was when I was doing student ministry. It was a big church leader that was sharing this, but he said, think about where your students are at right now. Think about when you were in high school. Think
Yep.
about Benji, when you were walking 10 miles back and forth in the rain to your school back in the day. But think about when you in those age times, your circle was small,
That's right.
right? Like your circle is only the people that you spend your time with. That's the only time, that's the only influence you really have in comparison
Mm-hmm.
is really the people you choose to be around. Well, now, especially with, I mean, in your kids, and I know my kids are going to deal with it one day. They're in an age now where they can follow people on the other side of the world,
I think they're already
and
dealing with it. It's
they
already
are,
there.
and they're comparing themselves to that.
Yeah.
And so now your circle, instead of being this small, is massive. And
Mm-hmm.
so, I mean, it's the same thing with like, I mean, anything, news travels so quick. Something happens, everybody knows about it instantaneously. And so it's so easy to compare yourself to what other people are doing, because now it's not just, me from little any town USA. It's me versus the world,
Right.
worldwide. I can follow anybody at any country at any time and see the skill sets and the things that they're doing. So, and obviously, I feel like advertising, peer pressure, those things follow in. But I believe a lot of the reason we see the things that we have in culture now comes from what we see on social media.
Yeah, there's no question about it. I mean, it is, as you said, the platform is there. I
Hmm.
mean, look at what was it, 10, 15, 20 years ago, I think we've talked about this on a previous episode. We had MySpace, right? Now you got
Hmm.
Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. I mean, you got all of them now. And so
Snapchat and
not only are you
YouTube
seeing
and
it there, you're seeing it on all these other platforms as well. So it just magnifies the issue, I
I mean,
think.
I have to plan time out of my day to post even for our mitigation businesses. This morning I worked just a picture, nothing crazy today, just a simple Monday picture.
Yep.
Posted on Facebook, posted on Instagram, posted on LinkedIn. If it was a video, well, now I need to push it on TikTok and I need to push it on YouTube. Oh, don't forget, for our SEO standards, I need to push it on our Google business
Yep.
profile.
Yep.
So it's like, how many different places? I mean, just think about how many places of influence that we're having now. And it's understanding those things in our culture that we're surrounded by comparison. I
Yeah.
mean, surrounded by it. I mean, even as something as simple as what your kids are doing in school. I mean, people are posting all the time. I mean, sometimes some parents post more than others that they should be. There are some parents that of course I take pictures of my kids all the time, but I can't help but think a lot, Benji, like what are Addison and Gracie going to think one day when they get old enough to have these things, if they're even still around, which I'm
Yeah. Oh
assuming they
yeah.
will be. But what are they going to think
I
about?
think it's going to be magnetized even more,
Mm, it will be.
even
And
more.
I'm probably going to ruffle some feathers, but I'm just going to say it. I think it's even worse when you have those parents that create social media for their toddlers
Yeah, true.
just so they have it. Hey, keep up with what Mary Kate's doing. I'm like, they're two. I mean, there's not a lot going on. So, but that's what the whole point of me even joking about that is we're in a culture, and you were to a point where people feel like, man, I need to have a social media for my 2-year-old.
Well,
Like,
think okay. So there was a
like,
couple years
mhm.
ago that there was this toy review. You probably know which one I'm talking about. Was out there on YouTube, and every time that you would come across a video, this kid's opening a brand new toy, brand
Oh
new.
gosh.
Okay, people
Yep.
are sending these toys to this kid, which, by the way, he has millions of followers, being paid by who knows, to promote their toys or
Mm-hmm.
what have you. And all it
Mm-hmm.
does is creates that jealousy factor of going, well, why can't I do that? Why can't I
Yeah.
do that with my kids? Why can't I do that with and so you get into
Yeah.
then you feel bad because the kid goes, well, daddy, mommy, I want that toy. I want, I
Yep.
want, I want that. I want that. He can have that. Why can't I have that? And
Yeah.
to your point, it creates that jealousy,
Yeah.
and such that it just again magnifies
Well,
everything.
and that's something we're wanting to teach our girls is that, I mean, all comparison aside, like you don't have to have everything. You don't have to have everything. You know, you don't have to have everything everybody else has. And that's where some of those things for comparison come in. You're watching what other people have and what they get to do. And you know, we've talked about this before. I mean, you know, when we've spent time with you and with Sarah, my wife, like I don't feel like you know, we're big on posting things that we do
Yeah.
or what we get to do, you know, because it's a big deal. And so I don't want anybody to ever feel like I'm trying to throw these things out there to be compared or be someone to be compared to.
Right.
um for me, my social media has just always been in sharing the things that I enjoy creating,
Right.
or sharing my kids. That's why I was saying it's funny to me, like one day when Addison and Gracie look back, you know, when they get old enough to have it, like, Dad, you shared that about me? You posted that video? You know, so those are,
The memories pop up.
yeah, the memories pop up and they'll see some of that. So, but I do think it does have, you know, and I'm not an expert. I'm not a doctor. I'm not any of those things, but I'm going to be honest with you and be 100% transparent with you that comparison is a weakness for me. I mean, I struggle with comparison, and I heard all the time, even when my wife and I were doing student ministry, I heard people all the time say, "Oh, well, don't follow what other student ministries are doing. Don't do this." I'm like, "Yeah, but I want to follow that for ideas," and we'll get into that here in a
Right.
moment. But you know, oh, it's easy. Don't do this, but it was tough because I'm looking for ideas or inspiration and stuff like that. But man, I can tell you, I have the worst time struggling with comparison. And you guys in our meetings have heard me. I can't do that. I don't know how to do that. I don't have the skill set. Oh, I'm not good enough to do that. I can't make, you know. And y'all will send ideas all the time, and I'm like, I don't know. I'm not that good. And
So let me ask you this: what's the reasoning why? What do you attribute it to?
I guess not knowing, not fully understanding how to do things sometimes. Um, I mean, I guess self-doubt too. I mean, even myself when I'm creating, whether it's photography or, you know, videos. I mean, even today, working on stuff, our mitigation stuff, and I worked on stuff for the church. Like I sat there and I re-edit these things like 15 times because I'm like, this looks stupid. I don't like this. Nobody's gonna like this. And I feel that way. I feel anxiety every time. I share pictures with, you know, you and your wife. I share pictures with other people in the church. Anything that I take on Sundays, I always try to send it to people so they'll have it, you know, and no one has ever said anything negative. And I don't think they would. I feel like I have my work is quality.
You're trying to measure yourself,
Yeah.
yeah, against something that may not be
I
achievable in your
guess
mind, I guess.
what is my standard? Maybe for me is that, I mean, because I can tell you, I mean, even sending pictures to like you guys, and y'all are some of our best friends, I get anxious sending those pictures because I guess I also find value, a lot of value, and attribute that to how you guys feel about my content and the things that I create. Because ultimately, I feel like that defines who I am. Like this is
Mhm.
my skill set. This is who I am as a person. Like I have a camera. Like I do, like I carry it everywhere. I want to create cinematic pieces and take mind blowing pictures and do all this. So I feel like the people I share it with, maybe that anxiety, because I get I won't lie to you, I get so much anxiety from it, and I
So
really,
so
it is.
so think of it like this. You're perfecting in your craft. You'll never
Mm-hmm,
be perfect. A person's never gonna be perfect to
mm-mm.
themselves. It's just
And
not
I
gonna
hope I'm
happen.
not. I know that's one of my big things. I don't want anybody to ever think I want to be. I don't, because the creative landscape is constantly changing. I mean, every day. So you've got, I mean, new cameras, new gear, new ideas, new trends, you know, and those are some of the things that you got to be ready. I guess honestly too, Benji, that's where some of the anxiety comes from, is I'm constantly, man, I feel like I always have to be on social media sometimes.
So,
And
okay. So let me flip the script. All right. So look, again, we talked about we're perfecting all the time. You're not perfect. Again,
mm-hmm,
there's only been one
mm-hmm,
perfect person on this earth ever in
mm-hmm,
history. One.
ever.
Okay. And even when Jesus himself, he was perfect. We know that. He was perfect. He was always teaching others to find ways that they could better themselves. and
Yeah.
could spread the gospel of Jesus Christ to other people. Okay.
Mhm.
But he had to teach them, and they had to be willing to not just be taught, but to learn and execute,
Yeah.
or they couldn't do it. All right. So if he's the only perfect person to ever have walked the face of this earth, we will never be perfect. I've told you, and I know you know this, but I'm just going to say it to our listeners. You're very good at what you do. If you were to show me two pictures that look the exact same and said, point out what I did different, I probably couldn't tell you.
Yeah.
Most people probably can't. But because you're comparing yourself to, I would say compare yourself to Adam West,
Yeah.
right? That's what I would say. You would
Yeah.
probably compare yourself to whomever.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and I think, I think I went through that a little bit. One of the things that you and I talked about, I mean, probably I guess what, like 6 or 7 months ago now. Man, I was just looking to I felt like I wanted to do more.
yep.
I loved creating stuff for the church and I love creating stuff for a mitigation business, but I was like, I want to do more. And I just felt like I needed to prove to myself I could do more.
You want to challenge
So
yourself. Let's just be
so I
real.
want to challenge myself. So I went out and I potentially looked at finding, a different team to be on, completely out of the mitigation
Yeah,
landscape,
yeah.
completely out, and put myself out there. And it didn't turn out like I thought it would turn out, and it was tough. Like
Mhm.
it felt like what I was doing was like I felt like I had the portfolio to say, "Hey, I have a skill set." And I feel like what made it worse is when that didn't turn out. And it was all for God's grace. Like
Yep.
that should not have been in our cards. Like financially, nowhere near where we should have been at. Lifestyle, like I've looked at some things, I would have been constantly gone away. And that's not what I would want. And so obviously I didn't see it at the time, but what God was saying, like, hey, this is not what you need. But for me, I was like, man, I need to go, I need to figure out something and do something. And when they got shut down, it just sucked. Like
Yeah.
it made it tough.
Yeah, but I mean, again, you mentioned social media. Maybe it's not. Maybe it has nothing to do with social media for a lot of people, right? Because you are a
Yeah.
social media guy.
Yeah.
But we're always looking to figure out. I mean, okay, let's be real. How many people actually go play in Major League Baseball? I mean, it's not that
Oh
many.
gosh. How many
NBA.
people make it to the show? Like,
Yeah,
what's the percentage?
we were talking about the NFL, a couple weeks ago,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like how many people actually. If you realize the number of people that actually get drafted on draft night, you're only
Mm-hmm.
talking about 300 total.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so those folks have reached. They're reaching the pinnacle. They still got to go
Yeah.
prove themselves. They got to execute, or they won't be a part of a team. Period.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's a few small percentage, and you take people that are always looking to get better in, I mean, their job. Okay, that's a big one right now.
Yeah.
Comparison culture. What do I got to do to take their position?
Yeah.
It's the same concept. It's not social media, so to speak, but
Yeah.
it's the same concept. They're always looking to compare themselves
Yeah.
because, for whatever reason, they don't look at the fact of, what do I got to do to be able to get that position?
Yeah. Well, and I think a lot of that is what I struggled with when it didn't end out the way that I wanted to. I think in my head, I'm like, well, I'm better than that person that they chose. Like,
Hmm.
and maybe I wasn't, maybe, and that's fine. I mean, you have to, they need to choose who's the best fit. But in my head, I'm like, well, dang, does that mean everything I've done is like meaningless up to them? Like, do I need to update? Do I need to do more of this? Do I need to do more of that? Like, what do I need to add? And I think sometimes too, that was the struggle is it just ended. Like, there was no more of this journey. It just came out and it says, hey, thanks a lot. We loved you. You were awesome. We'll keep you in mind for something else. Done. There was no like, hey, you need to add this or,
Yep.
and that's fine. You don't have to have that. I mean, people aren't required to do that, but I think it was tough because I instantly was comparing myself to who they did go with. And I'm like, well, is it because he's younger, like a whole lot younger than I am? And, am I more expensive? Am I, whatever it was?
Yeah. Right.
I mean, I'm telling you, Benji, like every single thing I started comparing myself. Is it this? Is it this? Is it this? Is it this? I couldn't get past it. And what even was worse is it felt like it hindered me creatively. Like it felt like almost kind of killed that for a little bit, struggled with, well, this stuff I'm creating is pointless. Like it
Now,
doesn't have.
you again, going back to what you were just saying there. Think
Mm-hmm,
about this. You're on that side of the spectrum. I'm
mm-hmm.
on the side of the spectrum that would say maybe the Lord didn't want you to go in that
Yeah.
direction or down that road.
I firmly believe that is 1000% what it is,
Okay, so
because
that's
we never fully understand. Only God understands what his plans are. We can't fully grasp that. All we
yeah,
know is what we as a human want.
right. And see, I would look at it from a it's not really what you're saying is not negative. We need to make
Mm-hmm.
people need to know that it's not being negative, but
Mm-hmm.
if you spun it to more of a positive approach, you probably were better than maybe they couldn't afford you. I mean,
And
that's just
that's what I'm
you know.
leaning on.
So I mean
you know?
that's another way to look at it.
Yeah. And I think it was, I look back and I'm like, but it pushed me to do more, because there's I know we've talked about this, but just in simple terms for me, I remember them asking me like, well, what's something you wish you were better at? And I said, well, I want to be better at recording in log form. That's all I want to record in. I want to be
Mhm.
able to convert my footage and color grade better. And maybe they heard that and they're like, oh man, we need somebody that can already do that. But you know what? Because when things didn't turn out for me, I said, and that's to me where sometimes there's a good and bad in comparison.
Mhm.
The good part of that is I said, you know what? Starting Jan 1, my camera is in this mode and this is what I'm doing. I am forcing myself to learn this trait and to learn this craft. And so I think sometimes, like what you're talking about, the positive, there's good and there's bad with comparison.
Absolutely.
I hope as we talk about this that we're not spinning. I don't want anybody listening right now to think like, oh man, comparison's bad. It's bad. It's bad. No, it's not bad. Comparison is good. We want to compare ourselves. Like, I want to be like Jesus. I've told people
Yeah.
before in a message, I've told people like, look, I want to be like Mark. I want to be like Luke. I want to be like John. I want to be like Paul. I want to be like all of them. I want to compare myself to them because they lived an amazing life and they walked with Jesus himself. And, and those are some of the things. So I feel like when it comes to comparison, there's good things, but there's got to be a balance. You
Right.
got to have a balance with it.
You talk speaking of comparison, you were talking about actually I was talking to one of our other teammates we have on our church side, and
Mm-hmm.
we were talking about, nearly 2 years ago, we had no first time guest like uh, program, right? We had guests come in, but we didn't
Mm-hmm.
have a process where we could really hone in on the fact of, hey, we're so glad you're here. We've got a
Mm-hmm.
gift for you. We want to, and then our pastors go and reach out to them. Okay. Well, now as you know, we're building this kids building coming. We're going to be in it very,
It's going
very
to add a
soon. Very
whole
soon.
new connections team. I
Yeah.
mean,
We've got
whole
to,
new connections
so
team.
now we can add to the team and not start from scratch.
You've got to have
So,
a surplus. So now
yep.
and that's one of the big thing you're trying to teach is like, we're trying to teach our serve team, like, hey, don't just serve, like recruit other people,
Yeah.
like help us become
Duplicate yourself.
duplicate yourself. And that's where I think sometimes too, that's one of the places, and we'll have to get into that in a different a podcast episode. But I can tell you, and you guys tell me this all the time, I'm the worst for duplicating myself. And maybe it is a comparison thing. I don't know. But
Well, I mean, again, we're always wanting people are wanting to learn, people are wanting to grow, people are wanting to be taught. Some
mhm,
people don't want to teach. There's nothing wrong with that, but we can always be helping other people grow in their
yeah.
craft. And that's just the truth.
Well, and you never know what it can do. I mean, like I attribute the skill set I have now to Pastor Brandon from Cultivate. I mean, he took the time to teach me how
Mhm.
to edit. I already had the skills. I mean, I was an AV nerd like all through high school, and I had every intention to go into to doing that, to doing communications, like doing media communications, and think, God left me down a different path.
Mhm.
But I will tell him blue in the face, if he hadn't taken the time to teach me this skill set, I don't even think I'd be sitting here right now. Like
Yeah.
I wouldn't know how to do any of this stuff. I don't even think I'd know how to start up a podcast or to do these things, because it just was able, because him doing those things helped me learn a skill set that opened a door to say, hey, you have a gift. This is your purpose. Like we talked about last week. This is what your purpose is.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, to your point, had he not shown you, had he not walked you through his process, what helps make it better, helped you, he invested in you to get it to where you could at least have a path of knowledge to figure it out yourself as you grew, right? You at least had a starting point. And I think a
Mm-hmm.
lot of times people get caught up in the fact, like we started out the podcast, they always approach the negative aspect of it versus what would it take for me to be able to, in my circle, obviously we know with social media there's no way possible if someone made a
Yeah.
post out there, you wouldn't have the time to help every single person with every single post of every single thing. It's just not possible. But what you can do is you can invest in your circle that are of people that are around you and help grow them, help make them better, because what that will do is it will light a fire for potentially them to either really love it or go down a different path. Maybe they don't like that specific thing. Maybe they want to try something else.
Yeah.
And I think that's what the comparison culture should be. I love the fact that we named this the mind games of comparison culture, because you're right. Sometimes it plays mind games with each of us, positive or negative, depending on how you look at it. But those mind games can help either make us better, or the flip side is we end up low self-esteem, depressed, anxiety issues. And we really want to help people understand you don't have to be that way. That's what the enemy wants. The enemy wants you to fall on that side, because if he can bring you down, then he can't see you. He doesn't want to see you succeed, because the more you succeed, we're bringing more God's glory to everything that we do. Right. So our comparison culture, if we could spin it, should be, Adam is really good. I wish I could do what he does. You know what? Let me, he's in my circle. Let me talk to him, spend some time with him to help figure out how he can help make me better.
Yeah, and that was one of the things that I was trying to think through as I was trying to create the title. Is I feel like comparison is a mind game, because it deals with our, and I think mental health is a huge thing. I think that's something that we're just, I think we're more self-aware of those things. The exhaustion. I mean, I feel like we've moved into a time, and I think you and I have kind of talked back and forth about this. I feel like we've moved into a time outside of what we typically need to do, like emergencies or things like that. But we've moved out of a time that you don't have to kill yourself from like 7 o'clock to 6 o'clock every day.
Right.
And so that's why sometimes I feel like those things they are healthy in that way, but it is a mind game, because you need to find ways to deal with it. If you're gonna deal with it, and if you're gonna have anxiety, have stresses, there's got to be a way to deal with things, whatever that is for you. Sometimes people deal with stress by running. I'm a runner. I'm a biker. I like to put my headphones in. I love working out in the morning. I may not look like it for those of you that are watching the podcast, but it's something that for me, that's how I deal with it. I think you've got to be able to deal with comparison in a healthy way as well.
I agree 100%. I mean, there are people, again, strengths, weaknesses, whatever. I think a strength could very well be that we should try to don't over compare yourself to someone else, because all you're going to do is, honestly, call it what it is. You're going to bring yourself down, and there's no reason for that. The Lord has put us here, as we said, on this earth for a reason. Let's make the best of it. If you're want to compare yourself for you to get better, I think that's a good comparison versus me trying to compare myself to something I can't be at this stage in the game. Doesn't mean that I won't at this stage in the game.
Focus on the strengths that you have. Focus on what you are good at, the things that you do bring. I mean, you can't do everything alone. I remember you sent me a video about a week or two ago for a company that you're part of, and I saw the production, and I'm like, my goodness, that looks good. But I knew I couldn't replicate that. It wasn't a comparison thing. I knew that they did that with a full team.
You know what's interesting though? The same video you're talking about, the first thing that came to my mind was Adam would do this. Adam can do this. So
Oh,
see,
I would give it a shot in a heartbeat, but I
it's the
know.
same. It's the same thing.
Mhm.
See, as you said in your mind, it was like, man, I wish I could do that, but I think you can do that.
I believe I can. I really do. I think what I was trying to say, focus on my strength, is that a video of that magnitude
Yeah.
has a production team, right? You have your gaffer, you have your lighting guy, you have your, your videographer, your focus puller, you have your
Hmm.
director. So it, it would be something that would take multiple people. The interview part, yes, you could probably do that by yourself.
Right.
But a lot of the action shots, the things of the things they were showing of the product, those are things that have a team. So that was kind of what I was getting at. I do believe I could. I have 100% belief that I could produce that. I already know in my head. I'm already, you and I were talking. I was like, oh, well, they were using this and this, and they had this product, and that's how they created this look. So I knew the process for it, but I feel like everybody has a strength. I mean, I've told, so I was talking to a buddy of mine, Josh with Bright Coal, when we
Good
were
guy, by the
creating.
way. Good guy.
Great guy, by the way. Hopefully he's listening to this podcast. Yeah, but if he does, I mean, like, great guy. He created my Adam West Media brand, and it
Hmm.
was, for me, that was a big deal because Josh and I go back to, I was one of his very first clients when he first started out. When my wife and I were at our other church, he created some graphics for me and for the church. And, so when I came full circle, I was like, bro, I want to pay you.
Yeah, yeah.
I want you, like, there's nobody else that I want to make my brand but you. Like, this to me is just part of my journey. It would mean so much to me if you're the one who did it.
Yep.
And so I remember when he and I did the breakout, he's like, all right, I know you. Like, we've known each other for years. I know what you are. Talk to me about your brand. Like, what do you want to do? And I told him, I said, I'll be honest with you right now. I am not a creative director. Like, I know in my heart that I am not somebody that's going to sit in a room and is going to churn out these amazing ideas. I know for me, and and it comes back to your comparison. For me, I am a soldier. When you
Hmm.
need something done, I can help put those things in place. I do lean on the creative ideas of other people. It helps me. It
Right.
helps me. It's kind of like having a bike with training wheels. I can ride my bike. It's just nice having a little bit of support
Yep.
on the left and the right to help get me to where I need to go. So I told him, I was like, look, this is not who I am, but I surround myself with people who are, so I can help do it. So when you say, Adam, I need a video project that looks like this, that has this mood, this feeling, this literature, I already know what to do. I got you. I know how to get this in place.
Yep.
But for me, I know I'm not the one. That idea that you have, I'm not always going to be the one to come up with that. That's just not my strength. So I have
Right.
to
Right.
play to that and not look at what other people are doing and understand that, where I start to eat away at myself, like, oh, I can't do that. I can't do that. Well, how do I know they can't do how do they know that they can't do what I can?
Right. For sure.
Because maybe that's not a strength of theirs. So I think that's a big part. I know went full circle to get to that, but
No, no.
playing on your strengths.
No, exactly. So I was going to say, play into your strengths. Think about this. You can only, we've said this on every other podcast, I think, control what you can. Basically, for a strength, use the tools that you have.
Yep.
Because we can always be looking at, I want the next best thing.
Yep.
I want the next biggest thing. I want the next best tool. I want the next best truck. I want the net,
Yep.
whatever the case. Use the tools that you have currently. Because, like you said, in the church world, it's quote, that okay, we may have not talked about this. The average church is 100 people. I can't remember if we've
Mm-hmm.
done that or not. The average church in America is 100 people. Use the
Mm-hmm.
tools you have.
Use what you have.
Just if you strive to be a 40,000 person church, great. You got to get there somehow. So
Yeah.
use the tools that you have. Then you can look back and go, man, look where we came from.
Yeah.
Not where I want to get to, because
Yeah.
you can always have dreams, aspirations, and goals. But again,
Mm-hmm.
use what you got.
Yeah, I had and I feel like I keep going to these, but just this conversation, I had another buddy of mine that's a photographer, and this weekend he couldn't be at a job that he had signed up, and he's like, hey, would you step in and do, the photography for me? I'm like, yeah, heck yeah. And so he was texting me today about getting some of the pictures edited. He just needed me to take them.
Yeah.
And he got to talking. He's like, hey, I got some questions. Like, you edit in this, correct? Like, I just downloaded this. And I was like, yeah, I said, look, man, I said, for me, I try to expand my knowledge. I want to know how to edit in Final Cut, in Adobe, and DaVinci Resolve. I want to know how to do all three of them. So if anything ever happened
Yep.
to one of the other editing softwares, I feel like I could pick up. Now, I will tell you, if I had to rank them based on what my skill set is, it's going to be Premiere Pro, DaVinci Resolve, and then Final Cut's like down here. Like I don't like the color grading in it. I struggle with it.
Yeah.
But and he was talking to me and he was like, man, yeah, I don't, this part of Final Cut too, I'm not a big fan of this color wheel. I have a hard time with it. And I said, look, man, use what gets the job done. Like
Mm-hmm.
that. I said, use, and that's not like this. It's not anything special. Just use what gets your job done. I've heard people tell me all the time, especially in the video world, it used to be when they were brand new, do you use a fly cam or a gimbal? Which a fly cam was basically a camera on a
Yep.
stick with a weight at the bottom, and it was used like a gimbal. And people would fight like, are you a fly cam or are you a gimbal person? Gimbal, fly cam. They would go back and forth, and people would just say, use whatever works for you.
Yeah,
What gets your
exactly.
job done? Granted, yes, every single one of them has a different look, like but it's a creative look, but the job still gets done and you still can produce a project for your client. It's the same thing in this. Use the skill set that you have to get the job done. That's all it
Mm-hmm.
is. I mean, at the end of the day, that's all you need, is just to have the job ready to go.
Yeah. So look, as we summarize this episode, okay, we'll put the bow on it. Don't
Mm-hmm.
let the enemy play mind games with you,
Mm-hmm.
because that's what he wants you to do. He wants you to play mind
Yeah.
game. He wants to play mind games with you to get your attention off of focus of what the task at hand is, whatever that may
Yeah.
be. Quit looking at, to your left about this job position that someone has that you want. What if your company is about to expand and you have an opportunity to grow further beyond that, or add another position on the team of
Yeah.
like-minded, qualities? You talked about social
Yeah.
media, or maybe it's music, maybe it's our family. Okay, that's a whole nother situation with family. But at the
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the day, focus on what you can, control what you can control, use the
Mm-hmm.
tools the Lord has given you at this stage in the game,
Yeah.
and the comparison culture will be with yourself to only get better. That's what we need
Yeah.
to remember.
Find things that help you. For me, if for our listeners, I'm holding a book right now. It's called Steal Like an Artist, and this, for me, this is kind of how I deal with these things. It is, if you're, I know you can't see it, for those of you to listen,
Looks
it's
like an
full
easy
of
read.
pictures, Benji. It's an easy read. Look at all them pictures, man. Like, I mean, this sucker is just full of pictures, but it's an easy read. I mean, it's like 120 pages, but it's got a lot of things in it, because it just teaches you about comparison. It teaches you how to find inspiration in other things. Like, one of the things that I pulled out from it, you and I were talking before, nothing is original.
Yeah.
Nothing is original. There was a quote from this. It's from a guy named William Ralph. It says, "What is originality? It's undetected plagiarism."
I
And
love it.
so, and even this, Benji, there was one right before it, as I was just flipping through and saw it, from David Bowie. I mean, of all people, the only art I'll ever study is the stuff I can steal from. And so there are things that you can learn from, and it's like this. It's not like, steal like an artist doesn't mean you take what somebody else does and basically replicate it 100%. It's taking things that other people do, and how can you make it your own?
Yeah.
Taking the ideas that people have and finding those things. That this right here, stuff like this, for me, is how I deal with comparison. It's
We
finding literature or things that I can kind of read through that spark those ideas for me,
Mhm.
so I can understand that. Because, like I told you guys before, I mean, and I'll be honest with you, I don't even think we have at all just broke the surface for me. Like, this is a struggle. Comparison is something that, I mean, I've told you before, Benji, I struggle with you guys even telling me I do well. Like, I don't know how to respond. Like, people, you tell me all the time, like, we give you the hardest time because you're a hype person, and you're like, oh my goodness, this is great. You did a good job. You know what it reminds me of? For those of you that are listening, Talladega Nights, when when he's sitting there, he's like, I don't know, doing my hands. Like, what do I do with my hands during the interview? That's how I feel when people like tell me I do a good job, or they do give me kudos. I don't know how to respond. But those are all things that I have to do so I can combat that comparison culture. Because when I hear those things, it lets me know that people truly do enjoy my art and they enjoy what I do. My picture doesn't have to look like my buddy down the street or the guy that's in Canada that's posting amazing things. It doesn't have to be that. My art is my own. My look is my own. The way that I do things is my own. And that's where I've got to get out of that mindset. And it's a daily struggle for me.
I had a guy tell me, but this has been a couple years ago now. Again, you were talking about our mitigation company. Mitigation, water damage, right? You're cleaning up the same water, regardless of what type of water it is. Okay. But this is interesting. We had a competitor, and the competitor was saying this, saying that, saying this, saying that, whatever. And he told one of the businesses, one of the centers of influence, his statement was this, and I've never forgotten it, and I will never forget it to the day that I live. He said, well, that's okay that they said that because they're just not in the same business we are. And what he was saying was, even though they clean up water, the way that they clean up water is the same that we clean up water. Let's just be honest. They don't do it the way we do it. Yeah. So my encouragement from a strength perspective is be you, do you, because that's what's going to set you apart.
We call that on our team, for those of you that may not know us, we call that the Wilson way. And what's funny is you and your brother don't use that phrase at all. I've never heard you guys once use that phrase. It's a phrase that I hear people in our team use without even being prompted. And when we say that, it means this is how our team does business. This is how we build business. And this is how we serve our customers. That's the Wilson way. And so that's being us. It doesn't matter who we are. It doesn't matter what's going on. Those are what we're doing to be us.
Yep. I met with last story. I met with another worship pastor from another church 2 or 3 weeks ago. And I brought up to him, I said, what's interesting is a lot of churches don't collaborate together. And I just don't understand why. And he said, what do you mean? And I said, well, think about this. Well, let's say that we had a citywide worship, time together. Everybody in the city
I'm 100% on board, by the way.
Okay, but you would make some killer video and photo.
That's why as soon as you said that, I'm like, when are we setting this up?
But I told him, I said, think about this. Who cares who leads a song? Who cares who plays the song? Who cares who sings the song? Here's what matters. We're all on the same team. Think about that. We're all on the same team.
Same purpose.
That's right.
Same purpose.
Use it.
I hear people all the time, and just to leave you with this, people say all the time, like, well, we need to do things like that church does, or we need to reach people that church does. Or, I've heard people say, oh, we don't like this church. At the end of the day, we're all on the same team.
Same team.
We all have one purpose, and that's bring people to Jesus. That's right. It. So if you do it A, B, and C, or we do it X, Y, Z, we'll do anything short of sin to bring people to Jesus. That's all that matters.
That's
at
right.
the end of the day. So.
That's exactly right.
Good conversation, man. I was, I'm not gonna lie to you. I told you before when you were talking to me, I was like, I don't know. I even tried to get you to talk me out of it and just let me, come up with a different show. A different show title. But man, hey, we're excited. Just a reminder, like we told you before, this episode we'll have next week off. Benji's got some business stuff out of town, some family things going on. So we will have a week off in between. But look, stay up to date with our social media. We'll be posting some content. We'll be showing some reels that you guys can see. But we'll be back in about 2 weeks with a brand new episode, brand new topic, and we're excited.
Very excited.
Let them know, Benji. Let them know before we head out of here what they need to be doing every single week, man.
Every single day. Every single day. Go out and live your best life. Live higher up.
Live that higher up life. All right. Thank you guys for listening. We love y'all. We hope y'all have a great rest of your week. Hey, Benji and I want to take a moment and just thank you for listening to the Higher Up Podcast. We really hope you enjoyed today's episode and just learned some valuable insights to help improve your own life. Hey, if you found today's episode helpful, we would be grateful if you could take a moment and rate us 5 stars on Spotify. Or if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, we just want to know what you think about the show. Either way, when you leave us a review, you're helping us grow our network and reach more people with our message. Remember, our mission is to empower you in every aspect of your life, and we're thankful for your support. We've got new episodes of the Higher Up Podcast dropping every other Thursday, so take a second and turn on notifications to stay in the loop. Make sure that you follow us on your favorite social media platforms to stay connected with our community. We just want to thank you again for listening, and we look forward to having you join us again on the Higher Up Podcast.